going straight to YouTube from Grace Episcopal Church in Hutchinson, Kansas. I'm Andrea Springer. We want to welcome everybody this morning. We want to welcome our guest, the Reverend Dr. Mandy Todd, who is here talking with us this morning. We've been doing story sharing now for a couple of years, and we have talked to people within our parish, and we've appreciated talking with people from outside of our parish, but who are our neighbors. So we're going to talk with Mandy this morning. The purpose of story sharing is to build community. It helps us get to know each other. It helps us to hear about other people's faith journeys, and maybe we can get some insight into our own. One of the things we're going to do, and we don't have our pieces of paper and pencils, but we will trust you to ask questions of Mandy at the end if you have any. We are honored today to not only have in our Right One service and our Right Two service, but in between, she's jumping in. This is Reverend Dr. Mandy Todd, who is from Messiah Lutheran in Lindsborg. She also works for the Kansas Interfaith Action Network, and that's KIFA for those of us who are into acronyms. Easier to remember. She's going to talk a little bit about that. But how long have you been with KIFA?
I have been with KIFA for just over a year and a half.
And explain a little bit about KIFA, your elevator speech for KIFA.
Sure.
Just start us off this morning.
I'll give you slightly more than the elevator speech in my sermon, so I won't give away too much here. But we are a state-based issue advocacy organization. We provide a moral voice at the State House in Topeka from the moderate to progressive faith lens. We're interfaith, so we work with people of all faiths, as well as with organizations and individuals of no faith. And we're really striving to make Kansas a just place for all Kansans.
All right. Well, we're going to do some of our standard questions for you, and then we've got a few extra that are specific to Mandy. First of all, what is your earliest memory of church or being in a church setting?
So this is a little bit of a tricky question for me because I grew up Catholic and I went to parochial school, preschool through 12th grade. So to think about my first experience in church, that first memory, I was at church a lot. every morning for mass, during the school day, most of the time, and then obviously on the weekends. But I think a core memory is that my mom and I sang in the church choir. And I remember being in the choir loft singing with the choir very, very early. I mean, much earlier than a young person probably should have been up there. But because I was with my mom, that was okay.
So your basis is in Catholicism, but what different churches have you been a part of?
So I was Catholic all the way through, obviously up until graduating high school. And then I went to Bethany College in Lindsborg, and that's a ELCA institution. So I sort of dabbled in the ELCA. I worked at a small ELCA church in Marquette, Kansas when I was in school. And then I moved to Colorado Springs and got a job as a choir director at First Congregational United Church of Christ in Colorado Springs. And when I landed there, originally it was just because I had taken a job. But when I got there, I was like, these are my people. These are people of faith who are really connected to community and justice. and the grace of God in the ways that really speaks to me. So I became a Congregationalist in the United Church of Christ, and then I was ordained in the UCC. And served in UCC congregations for all of my time in Colorado, which was almost 20 years. And then we came back to Kansas about 3.5 years ago, and there are not a lot of UCC congregations in Kansas. But there are a lot of Lutherans. And so I went back to the ELCA, so I'm serving at Messiah Lutheran there in Lindsborg.
Now, just for those of us who are not fluent in Lutheran acronyms, ELCA stands for
Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is the progressive version of Lutheranism in the United States.
All right, very good. Has being involved in church ever been painful, and why?
Yes. I have, as I said, that my first experiences in the church were in the faith community that I grew up in, and in that particular Catholic church, confirmation happens. We had religion class every day of my whole growing up, and confirmation happens in 8th or 9th grade, and you go through classes, catechism, and then get confirmed at the end of the year at Easter time. And I went through that process and knew at that point that I was not ready to be confirmed, that I just, I liked a lot of this work, clearly, because here I am, but I was not yet ready at 15 to make that kind of commitment. And I was told that if I didn't get confirmed, because it was connected to a class, I would fail religion class if I didn't go through confirmation. Luckily, my parents are amazing, and they were like, "Oh no, she won't fail," and they fought very hard for me. And I did not get confirmed, and I did get an A in the class. But that was the first time I really was hurt by the church, by the community, by these people who had held me in love in so many ways. And it was not the last time. I think for many of us who spend a lifetime in the church is a community full of beautiful and broken people, and we hurt each other. And that can happen, at sort of an institutional level, and it can happen more at a relational level. But the reality is, as people, we often hurt one another.
So obviously you were somebody who was searching why religion and why Jesus, and where's obviously the church in Colorado made a connection. Your path.
Yeah, I the pastor of that congregation, as I was discerning ordination, he said to me several times, "If there is anything else you can do, go do that. But if there's not, then you're called." And I think that is what a vocational calling to the church feels like. It keeps pulling you in. And I think that that's true for folks, who may not be called to ordained ministry as well. This is the language that I speak. The church has been so important and so powerful to me. And I see that language sometimes being really bastardized, really not what I think it is meant to be. And so I feel like we need to reclaim that language, to bring it closer to the gospel, to bring it closer to the message of Jesus. And I feel like that is what I'm called to do. So for me, there's really no escaping it. It is the only thing that I can do.
What was the transition? This is not on our list of great questions, but what was the transition like from a Catholic high school to a Lutheran college?
It was very strange. And Bethany is a Lutheran college, but certainly then, and especially now, it is not all Lutheran students. It was the most diverse community of religious and non-religious people I'd ever been in. I grew up in a place where pretty much everybody was Catholic, and not just Catholic, but like the same version of Catholic because we were in the same congregation. And then moving to a college where people were coming not only from different faith denominations, but from all over the nation and the world, I was exposed immediately to diversity I had never experienced. And that was great and opened my eyes in a lot of ways, and certainly, started me on the trajectory away from the Catholic Church, but also trying to kind of figure out, well, how can I hold on to the pieces that mean so much to me?
What connected you to KIFA? Because you said you were in Colorado. This was pre-session. You said you were in Colorado for 20 years?
Almost. Mm-hmm.
And came back kind of on
a whim.
What connected you to KIFA?
So this is an interesting story. So I was telling Andrea before we started, we were living in Colorado Springs, which, we really loved in a lot of ways, but my husband had never been to Lindsborg, my college town. And so one weekend we decided we were gonna take a trip and, just explore Lindsborg for the weekend. And we had such a great time. It was so much fun. We took did we take our tandem bicycle, or maybe we just took our 2 bicycles? And we biked all over the town. You can get from one end to the other in about 3 minutes on bike. And on the way home, we were driving and we sort of looked at each other and we were like, should we move to Lindsborg? And we did. We made this transition fairly quickly, but it really just felt like the right place to be. And oddly, so I was talking to some people in the United Church of Christ who are in Colorado. So in Episcopal language, it would be, I was speaking to the diocese in Colorado, and they were getting me connected to people in our diocese in Kansas. And so I got an email from someone named Rachel who was like, oh yeah, we're so glad you're coming to Kansas. This will be great. Where are you coming? And I said, Lindsborg. And she said, OMG, I live in Lindsborg. Now, Lindsborg is, 3,600 people. It's very strange that there are 2 UCC ministers living in Lindsborg. So we immediately connected. And she actually is the person who was in the role that I am in before I was. So we made this connection. She got me connected to KIFA, and I started attending meetings and getting more involved, going to the Capitol in a volunteer way. And then she, about a year and a half ago, she moved to California and told our executive director, you need to hire Mandy for this position. And so he did. And so, now I'm here kind of, she was in a part-time role. We've expanded that position to be full-time, really, diving in. KIFA has grown a lot in the last 3 to 5 years. So it's been good work.
How often are you in Topeka then?
So during the legislative session, I'm usually there once a week or so. We have a staff team of 5. 2 of those people are registered lobbyists, and they're in Topeka more often, probably during the session, 2 or 3 times a week. And then we have 2 other staff people who, we KIFA are there a lot of the days during session, which runs from middle of January to the end of April, depending on when things end.
What what does it look like to be an agency of faith in the state capitol?
It's definitely an interesting experience. KIFA began in KIFA actually began as Kansas Interfaith Power and Light, which is Interfaith Power and Light is a national organization that focuses on faith-based climate advocacy. So really focusing in on creation care. About 15 years ago, and over time, what we discovered is that there are lots of religious voices at the Capitol, but they are all very extreme right wing. There is no moderate to progressive voice in the State House. And so as we expanded, we realized that that was a gap that we really needed to fill. And so we expanded into doing more with human rights and anti-violence, as well as continuing our climate portfolio. But we are at the state level really the only organization that speaks from a faith lens, a moral lens, that is speaking to more of a social justice, progressive lens.
And what keeps you involved?
I think it goes back to the conversation we had around vocational calling. I really think that this is imperative work, especially right now in the face of Christian nationalism. The understanding of what it means to be a Christian in the United States right now is being usurped by this nationalism, by a Christianity that I don't understand, and don't really think is following Christ. And so I think it is my role to fill that gap as much as I can, to reclaim the language of faith as the mercy and justice and compassion that God calls us to.
And are you seeing strong indications of that Christian nationalism at the State House?
Absolutely, yeah. It it is pervasive and insidious, and also veiled at times, and sometimes completely unveiled. Even this year, I can think of a number of legislation that has been brought forward, lots of anti-trans that is really kind of attacking trans folk from a moral perspective, attacking immigrants, which that one is the kind of hardest pill to swallow in some ways, because our biblical imperative to care for immigrants and foreigners and refugees is undeniable. But Jesus' ministry to those on the outside, in my estimation, would absolutely wrap around the LGBT community as well. We saw Ty Masterson, who is the president of the Senate, invoke God's Jesus' name and Jesus' work in the defending of a resolution to make a Charlie Kirk Day in Kansas. And so there's, again, some veiled attempts to kind of conflate Christianity and nationalism, and also some really outright attempts to do that as well.
Are there some things that have come out of your work with KIFA that have surprised you?
Yes.
Both good and bad.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'll give you a very recent example. So I don't even know if I'm going to get the timing right on this. Um, Early last week, late the week before, um, there was a bill that was being brought forth that would require any driver's license or birth certificates that had been trans and non-binary folk had changed legally in the state of Kansas to reflect their preferred gender. There was a bill that came out that would kind of nullify all of those, require folks to get new IDs that matched their gender assigned at birth, sex assigned at birth. And that bill was coming through. It went very, very fast. Within 24 hours, they had a hearing on it. But we, along with our partners, requested folks to write testimony. We got over 200 and almost 250 pieces of testimony within 24 hours. They had a hearing on that bill and then proceeded to engage a process called the gut and go. And this is a thing that is completely unbelievable to me that this exists. But they take a bill that has already gone through the process, the legislative process. They strip all the language from that bill and insert language from another bill so that it does not have to go through the process again. So they took a bill that had gone through the process, took the language out, put the language of this gender markers bill, and then added in a bathroom bill that would require people to use the bathroom of their sex assigned at birth. Added that to the bill. Again, this new bill had already gone through the process, so none of that had to happen. Public hearings, testimony, calls for any kind of public input. And then within 24 hours, it was on the House floor. And through a very, very lengthy debate where there were a lot of legislators who were working really hard to bring some clarity to what was going on, it was passed along party lines, immediately sent to the Senate, passed along party lines. So within a period of, 72 hours, maybe 48 hours, this bill was rushed through. It's now sitting on Governor Kelly's desk. And for me, I am surprised that that's legal. I am surprised that that kind of process, the carriers of the bill will say, everything we did was legal, and that's, mostly true. But is it just? Is it right? Is it what we've asked our representatives to do? That's questionable. So I learned a new word in this work, chicanery, the ridiculousness that happens at the legislative level sometimes is really quite extreme.
This is just a personal observation. Do you think that legislation like this is being pushed through this session because it's an election year and it's red meat for the base?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had any good surprises?
Yes, absolutely. I should have started with that.
That's all right.
I am surprised all the time. So you asked me how much time I spend in Topeka, which especially during the legislative session is significant. But the biggest part of my travel is coming to congregations like yours. I am out in the world 1 to 2 Sundays a month, usually preaching, doing things like this with congregations across Kansas. And there are large congregations and small rural congregations in this state, people of faith who are doing amazing work, who are standing up for the vulnerable. They're doing it from their congregations, and they're doing it in much more, broad and public ways. There are all kinds of people in Kansas who are committed to justice. And I don't think that's the narrative of people of faith. I don't think that's the narrative of Kansans, certainly not Kansans of faith, right? I think there's a kind of a belief that if you go to church in some rural community in Kansas, you are going to be a certain kind of person, a certain kind of community. And that's not always true. And that is surprising and beautiful.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the group. What's one thing you'd like to share about yourself that might surprise the folks in this group?
I don't know if this is surprising, but I have a doctorate of ministry from Drew University in New Jersey, a Methodist institution. That's another little connection I have there. So maybe that's what makes me good at this job, going to all these different congregations. But my area of research was at the intersection of justice, spirituality, and the arts. My undergraduate degree is in music education. I was a middle school choir teacher for almost a decade. And so one of my favorite things to do is to think about the ways that the arts help us to do public theology, help us to show up in the world in space in ways that are unique. We can get up and protest and rally, but when we sing together, our hearts start to become one. We connect in different ways. When we hear a beautiful piece of poetry, we see each other in different ways. So that is one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about, is how to sort of bring the arts into these justice spaces.
Very good. Now, does anybody else have questions for Mandy? Oh.
In unison, their hands come up.
You want me to ask it? You want me to ask it?
Go ahead, you ask it.
How is your organization funded?
Thank you. That's a great question. The question is, how is the organization funded? So we are donor funded. We have individuals who support KIFA through singular one-time donations, but the best is sustaining donations. Folks give $10, $20, $30 a month, and that adds up significantly. We also have congregational partners. So I've shared some information with Father Ted about our KIFA 1 partnership, where congregations can make a public commitment to stand with us. And part of that is making a financial commitment. That's a financial gift that is completely up to your congregation. We have little bitty congregations who give $50 or $100 a month. We have larger congregations that give $3,000, $5,000 a year, but making that financial commitment. And then we also have some denominational partnerships. Our biggest denominational partnership is with the ELCA, the Lutherans. We are the state public policy office for the Central State Synod of the ELCA. We have been essentially contracted with the ELCA to do this statewide advocacy in Kansas. And then, of course, we are always on the lookout for grants, and we have gotten some really good-sized grants from organizations. We get grants yearly from the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, from Health Forward, other funding organizations. So at this point, I think we are just a little bit over 50% grant funded, and then the other is individual, congregational, and denominational support.
Can I ask whether it's a 501c3?
We are a 501c3.
Okay.
So we do nonpartisan advocacy. Yeah.
I may be backing up here just a little bit, but do you have a relationship business-wise with the governor's office?
We know the governor, and she is supportive of our work. She's, attended some events with us. Moti is our executive director. He's a Jewish rabbi and has been in advocacy in this way for decades. And he talks to the governor, a couple of times a session. But there's nothing official about that relationship.
So, how do you stay in this work without being overcome by anger and outrage? Just listening to you now a little bit, I'm feeling both anger, outrage, and powerlessness. And part of it for me is one of my questions, and you may have some other answers to this, but do you have practices or something, whether individually or communally, that help keep you in this work in the way that you'd like to stay in this work?
That's a really good question. I will say the legislative session is absolutely the hardest time. The session started on January 12th. Is that 2 weeks ago? And it is a beat down. Long days, bad news all the time. And so I don't know if right now is the time for me to answer this question. But I will say, I am inspired daily by the folks who engage with KIFA's work, who just keep showing up. People who have lived experience, who are directly impacted by this horrible legislation, show up all the time. They are giving testimony. They are, rallying in the State House. And it is a big coalition of people. One of the things that we try to do with our work at KIFA, the legislative session is 3 months of the year, and I don't know if you know this, but there are 12 months. So we have, it's like on Sunday, with pastors, they're like, well, you only work on Sunday, right? KIFA does not only work during the legislative session. The other 9 months of the year, we're doing work to educate and to advocate for what's going to come up in January. And one of the things we're doing is coming to local communities to build community and to find people. And I cannot say how important your local community is to this work. You have to connect in with this group of folks who is committed to you. Isolation is a tactic, right, that gets used to make you feel like you're all alone. But then we keep showing up on Sunday morning, and we know we're not. We keep showing up to rallies, to protests, and we know we're not. So one of the things KIFA did last year, I was talking about the way that I love to bring in art. We created this thing called KIFA Coffee Houses, and Father Todd, I know you were there. It's sort of like church for KIFA. We come together and we sing and we hear speakers and we talk to one another. So I really do think that, grounding ourselves in those practices, whatever they are, that help us to remember that we're not alone. We are in this work together, and we are in this work with God. It has to help, get us to the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. But again, I feel you, man.
I don't know how much of a question this is, but I do pay attention to what comes out of Topeka. I don't research it every day, but it seems like so much that's coming out deals with culture wars. And one question is, what percentage? Does it dominate the session, or has it? It seems like they're just out to marginalize people, and which probably makes it very tough. I mean, obviously it makes it tough, but it seems like everything I see, if it's a trans thing, or if it's an LGBTQ, or if there's this legislation, I think, that came out, the age that you can't bring a little boy into a girl's bathroom.
That's in the bathroom bill, yeah.
That's in the bathroom bill.
Mhm.
So, I guess does that dominate?
Yeah.
I mean, just the marginalization of
Yeah.
people. I mean, you know, we could talk about things like property tax relief. I mean, there's things that would affect all of us in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And to me, this is just a veiled attempt. It's just out to marginalize people.
Absolutely. And I think especially what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, pretty much everything that is being brought forth it fits into that culture wars category. There are people who are bringing forth bills that would help people. And this rally that we did, which I think I'll talk about it in my sermon, a couple of weeks ago, really asked our legislators to focus on people-centered policy. And we had over 650 people gathered in the rotunda that day. But I think we all know that midterm elections are going to be very, very important. If you are not aware yet of the amendment to the Kansas Constitution about how we elect state judges, court justices, we are going to have some really intense focus on that amendment, because that could change the landscape dramatically in ways we don't want it to be changed. So there are things that, we really focus on what we can do. We find that we are almost always on the opposing side of legislation. So then when we get to speak in, when we get to speak positively about legislation, it's like the best day ever.
Right.
So that's always good. But I think you're right. We are seeing extreme culture wars, marginalization, and this is where I think our work, less about advocacy and more about education and about engaging people, is so important. We've done a lot of work around fighting Christian nationalism, around support of public education, because we know that that is how we can educate and mobilize the base of all of these people. But also, I think one of the things that KIFA does, and there are other non-faith organizations that do this work, is they point out the absolute ridiculousn's that is happening. It is impossible for you as a person who has a job and has kids and has all the things of life to know what is happening at the State House. And so we need organizations like KIFA who are there every day listening to those hearings. If it weren't for orgs like KIFA and Loud Light and others, the public would not know what had happened with this gut and go of SB 244, this bathroom bill that was shoved in. You wouldn't have any idea it was happening. But these organizations are bringing those things to light, and it's the only way that we can fight it.
Riley.
Do you happen to have any words of inspiration or comfort for trans people who are being actively threatened even before the bill all comes through? Because I have friends already being actively threatened for just trying to obey the law.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of inspiration or comfort in this time?
Yeah, that is really hard. And I think I will say, number one, we are working with some orgs who are planning some, I don't know if I can say this, shit-ins at the State House because of this bathroom bill. Like, where are people going to pee and poop, right? And so there are some actions that are happening that will kind of bring that to light. There are people who are very upset about that particular legislation and others, the gender affirming care ban for young people that passed last year and other things. The best word of hope that I can say is that LGBT rights is a very important aspect of KIFA's work, and we will not stop fighting. We will continue to stand up with our coalition partners and point out that this is hateful and harmful legislation that targets a very small population for a very specific purpose. It is to other people. It is to create the us versus them. And we will not engage in us versus them. We will bring people in, we will bring people together. So I don't know if that is enough hope, but it is what we're working towards right now.
All right, Julie.
I think this kind of fits with what you're saying. I'm curious about your connection with some of those super conservative folks in Topeka. Like, is there any friendly conversation or middle ground at all with the extreme right people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's middle ground, but we do kind of know where we can push on individual people, on individual issues, right? We know that this legislator is super into the freedom of speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can push on that person about how is requiring people to out themselves on their driver's license and or in public bathrooms, how is that honoring freedom of speech, right? So we work those angles as best we can, and that's the really great thing about having Moti, especially in the State House regularly. He is talking to people, and he does know kind of there is a very tight community of progressive orgs who are lobbying. They all know each other. They know, we share information, and we do kind of target the best that we can to move the needle just a little bit.
Okay. Well, a great discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mandy. We love having you here.
Glad to be here.
Grateful for story sharing. And we're going to let the clergy team go best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you most stuff that I had.
Yeah, would you, and maybe during announcements, would you remind, share that? You can share it now.
So Gina Long, I don't know if you knew, had surgery on Friday. Things went south. Now it's back north. She's not up for visitors